We live in a time where the highest aspiration seems to be a life without friction. The dream of a light existence, free from conflict, expectations, and demands, has become a kind of collective fantasy. But have you ever noticed how those who most desperately chase ease and comfort often carry a quiet emptiness inside? It's as if, in trying to avoid all forms of discomfort, we've also silenced the very forces that give life depth and meaning. This paradox is especially painful for those who genuinely desire to live well. They imagine that a peaceful life means a painless one. They invest in routines that avoid tension, relationships that don't confront, and choices that minimize risk. And yet, at the end of the day, they lie awake with a strange sense of restlessness, a longing that no comfort can fully satisfy. The insight here is simple but unsettling. Comfort alone cannot fulfill a soul made for growth. And growth, by its very nature, requires resistance. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard and psychologists like Carl Jung warned about this. To flee from discomfort is often to flee from one's own maturation. In fact, emptiness may not be a sign that something is wrong with your life, but that something essential is being avoided. That ache in your chest, the vague dissatisfaction after a day of peaceful avoidance, is not your enemy. It might be your soul trying to wake you up. Have you mistaken comfort for meaning? Real maturity doesn't emerge from ease. It's forged in tension. Just like a muscle that only strengthens when pushed, character is built in the slow, sometimes painful process of facing what we'd rather escape. This is not a call to martyrdom or self-punishment. It's an invitation to stop expecting life to be light in order to be good. Because a full life, paradoxically, is often a heavy one, rich in responsibilities, full of honest conflict, and marked by the kind of struggles that shape who we become. So before we move on, leave a comment. Have you ever felt inexplicably empty even when everything seemed comfortable? And if this video already resonates with you, consider subscribing. There's more to come, and it might just help you carry the weight of life with more meaning. It's tempting to believe that peace is the reward for having resolved every inner and outer conflict, that once we've eliminated all tension, all uncertainty, all contradiction, then, and only then, will we finally rest. But this idea, as comforting as it sounds, is deeply misleading. True peace does not arise when conflict disappears. It arises when we learn to carry it with integrity. Have you ever tried to silence a conflict inside you, only to find that it grows louder in the silence? Maybe you avoided a necessary conversation, or pretended not to care about a decision that deeply affected you. The discomfort didn't vanish. It just moved inward, mutating into anxiety, resentment, or numbness. This is because inner peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of coherence. In the Stoic tradition, Epictetus taught that the wise person is not the one who feels nothing, but the one who responds rightly to what is felt. Peace, then, is not a passive state of calm. It's an active harmony between our actions, values, and conscience, even when life is turbulent. Think of peace as the quiet strength of a tree standing firm in a storm, not the stillness of a windless day. Many people waste years trying to remove all sources of discomfort, changing jobs, partners, habits, hoping that one day life will finally settle down. But what if the peace we're seeking won't come from changing our circumstances, but from changing our posture toward them? Maturity begins when we accept that life will bring contradiction, that love and pain, clarity and confusion, joy and sorrow often arrive hand in hand, and that peace is not about choosing one and erasing the other, but about holding both without breaking. Ask yourself, are you waiting for all your problems to disappear before you allow yourself to feel at peace? Maybe it's time to redefine peace, not as the end of conflict, but as the ability to walk through conflict without betraying what's most true in you. This shift might be the first step toward real maturity, and it's precisely here, in the discomfort of this truth, that your growth can begin. There is a kind of suffering that pierces deeper than physical pain, the kind that haunts us after a failure, a betrayal, or a choice we deeply regret. It doesn't just hurt, it accuses, it exposes. It reminds us that something essential has been neglected. And yet, most of us spend years trying to silence this inner ache. But what if that pain isn't there to punish you, but to wake you up? Moral suffering, the sting of a wasted opportunity, the shame of a cowardly choice, the weight of not being who you know you could be, is often the only thing strong enough to break through our layers of self-deception. It's uncomfortable, yes, but it's also honest. And sometimes, honesty is the only thing that can lead to genuine change. The philosopher Viktor Frankl understood this. He believed that suffering, when faced with dignity, could become a path to meaning, but only if we take responsibility for how we respond to it. In a culture obsessed with feeling good, this message is hard to swallow. We're told to move on, to stay positive, to let go, as if maturity means never looking back, never feeling remorse. But remorse can be sacred. Guilt, when rightly understood, is not the enemy. It's a mirror. And sometimes, what it shows us is exactly what we need to see. Have you ever felt pain not because someone hurt you, but because you failed to be the person you hoped to be? That's not weakness. That's conscience. And conscience, though painful, is one of the highest expressions of our humanity. Taking responsibility for our pain doesn't mean blaming ourselves for everything. It means recognizing that how we interpret and respond to suffering shapes the kind of person we become. Are you using your pain as an excuse or as a turning point? There is no real growth without a confrontation with our own failures. But this confrontation isn't meant to crush us, it's meant to refine us. So let the pain speak, not to drown you in regret, but to awaken the part of you that is ready to begin again this time, with more courage and more truth. What if a stronger, wiser version of yourself is waiting on the other side of a very simple but radical habit, choosing a small discomfort every day? We're not talking about grand, heroic acts. We're talking about the quiet, deliberate decision to do the harder thing when the easier path whispers your name, to keep your word when it's no longer convenient, to stay silent when pride demands you retaliate, to listen, really listen, when you'd rather interrupt. These are not glamorous moments, but they are moments of formation. In ancient philosophy, particularly in the Stoic and Christian traditions, voluntary discomfort was seen not as self-punishment, but as soul training. Like an athlete disciplines the body to endure pressure, the mature person disciplines the will to endure moral weight. This is the soil where character is grown. The practice might be as humble as resisting the urge to scroll mindlessly when you're bored, or waking up 10 minutes earlier to sit with your thoughts instead of rushing into distraction. These choices, though small, slowly teach the soul a vital truth. I am not ruled by what is easy. Why does this matter? Because life will get heavy, and when it does, your ability to hold firm will not come from theory or motivation. It will come from habit, from the memory of 1,000 small inner victories. Russian novelist Fyodor Dostoevsky once wrote, "There is only one thing that I dread, not to be worthy of my sufferings." This haunting line invites us to prepare, not for a suffering-free life, but for a life in which our suffering can be met with dignity, because we trained for it. Have you ever thought of pain as something to rehearse for? Try this. Today, choose one small act of voluntary discomfort, something that challenges your ego, your laziness, or your need for control. Not to prove anything, not to punish yourself, but to train. Train to be someone who can carry more weight without breaking. This is how we grow in quiet strength, one difficult choice at a time. One act of restraint, one step deeper into the kind of maturity that no comfort can ever produce. There is a growing narrative today that healing means erasing all traces of past pain, that a truly whole person is someone who has finally overcome every wound, transcended every scar, and lives untouched by their history. But this idea, though seductive, is profoundly dangerous, because healing does not mean forgetting, and maturity does not require amnesia. In fact, the demand to be totally healed, to be cleansed of all trauma, all sadness, all regret, often becomes a new kind of prison, a narcissistic fantasy where pain must be eradicated at any cost, even if it means denying the parts of us that shaped our depth, our empathy, and our truth. The psychologist Carl Jung warned that the shadow, the painful dark aspects of the self, does not disappear when ignored. it grows stronger. What matures us is not the elimination of pain, but its integration. The ability to say, yes, I was wounded, and yet I am still here, more human, more compassionate, more real. Are you chasing a version of yourself that has never been broken? If so, consider this. Some of the most grounded, wise, and generous people you'll ever meet are not those who have healed from everything, but those who have healed with everything. They carry their stories not as burdens, but as sources of moral authority. Tolstoy's characters, for instance, often carry deep traumas, but their dignity emerges not from escaping suffering, but from embracing it as part of their moral journey. Your past pain is not a flaw to be photoshopped out of your identity. It is a chapter in the story that made you capable of understanding others and yourself more deeply. What if healing is less about feeling good and more about becoming good? Try this. Instead of asking how to eliminate your wounds, ask how to honor them. What have they taught you? Who have they made you more capable of loving? What kind of strength did they force you to develop? This shift changes everything, because a soul obsessed with erasing pain remains shallow, but a soul that integrates pain becomes profound, and the world needs more people with that kind of depth. Imagine losing everything, your home, your freedom, your loved ones, and still finding a reason to live. Viktor Frankl did not imagine this. He lived it. As a Jewish psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps, Frankl faced a level of suffering most of us cannot fathom. But out of that abyss, he gave the world a piercing insight. We do not get to choose our suffering, but we always get to choose our response to it. For Frankl, the meaning of life was not found in pleasure or comfort, but in how we relate to suffering. Pain, he argued, is not inherently degrading. It becomes degrading only when we suffer without purpose. But when we find meaning in our pain, when we allow it to shape our values, our mission, our compassion, it transforms us. Have you ever asked, why me in the midst of suffering? Frankl would gently shift the question, what is this pain asking of me? This doesn't mean romanticizing suffering. Pain remains pain, but it becomes bearable, even redemptive, when connected to something greater than the self, a responsibility, a relationship, a calling. In his words, those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. So many today suffer without meaning. They endure breakups, failures, illnesses, and feel only the emptiness of loss. But perhaps what's missing is not healing, it's interpretation. In literature, the hero's journey is always marked by suffering. Odysseus, Dante, Prince Mishkin. None emerge wise without descent into darkness. The descent is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of depth. Have you found meaning in your most painful experiences? Try this. Reflect on a past suffering that once seemed unbearable. Ask yourself, what did this pain awaken in me? What virtues did it demand? Patience, courage, forgiveness? Write it down. Let the memory become not just a scar, but a signpost. This practice reclaims your pain from chaos and connects it to character. Because in the end, suffering is not what breaks us. It's how we interpret it that makes us, or unmakes us. And the freedom to choose that interpretation is where our true dignity begins. Look around and you'll notice something strange. Many adults today struggle to tolerate even mild frustration. A delayed response, a failed plan, a no that disrupts their desires. And suddenly, the world feels unbearable. But this isn't just emotional fragility. It's a deeper cultural wound, the infantilization of the modern psyche. We are, in many ways, a generation trained to believe that discomfort equals injustice. From early on, many were shielded from hardship in the name of protection. Parents intervened to solve every conflict. Systems were adjusted to avoid any trauma, and success was promised as a right rather than earned through resilience. The result? A distorted expectation that life should cooperate with our feelings. But life does not exist to validate our emotions. And maturity is not the absence of frustration, it's the ability to endure it without collapsing. Philosophically, this goes back to Aristotle's idea of eudaimonia, human flourishing through virtue. Virtue, he said, is forged in repeated struggle, in the deliberate shaping of desires through reason and habit. A person who cannot bear frustration cannot grow in virtue, because they're stuck demanding reality bend to their will, rather than adapting their will to reality. Have you ever caught yourself reacting with disproportionate anger or despair to a small setback? That moment reveals something important: how much we've internalized the lie that difficulty means something is wrong. But in truth, frustration is the friction through which strength of character is built. The Russian novelist Tolstoy observed that the greatest souls are not those who escape frustration, but those who absorb it and are transformed. His characters often fail, suffer, and disappoint, but those who grow do so because they learn from frustration, not flee it. Try this. The next time you feel frustrated, pause and name it. Then, instead of reacting, ask, what part of me is being challenged right now? My pride? My impatience? My control? This simple question turns frustration into formation. Because here's the hard truth. If you want to grow, you must stop expecting the world to be your caretaker. Real adulthood begins the moment you stop blaming life for your discomfort and start letting discomfort teach you how to live better, deeper, and more fully. There is a unique kind of pain that arises not from external tragedy, but from the quiet collision between who we are and who we pretend to be. It's the sting we feel when we can no longer lie to ourselves, when the mask slips and reality, raw, unfiltered, and unflattering, meets us face to face. Pain, in this sense, is not the enemy. It is a revealer. Our modern culture often treats pain as something to be avoided at all costs, a sign that something is broken and must be immediately fixed. But not all pain is pathological. Some pain is diagnostic. It tells the truth. It shows us where we are fragile, where we lack structure, where our illusions are starting to crack. And maybe that's why we fear it so much. The philosopher Simone Weil once said, "The danger is not that the soul doubts whether there is bread, but that by a lie it persuades itself that it is not hungry." In other words, worse than suffering is denying the soul's need for meaning, covering the wound with distraction instead of facing what it reveals. Have you ever felt pierced by a moment of clarity? Not because something new appeared, but because you finally saw what was already there? Pain often gives us that clarity. It strips away the noise and demands attention. The end of a relationship reveals our dependency. The failure at work reveals our over-identification with success. The loneliness reveals a disconnection from our deeper values. In Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov even declares, "I don't accept this world." But his suffering, in refusing to be numbed, becomes the very place where meaning begins to break through. What if your pain is not an interruption of life, but the very place where life is trying to speak? Try this. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of this pain?" ask, "What is this pain trying to reveal about me?" Sit with the discomfort. Trace its message. What illusion is dying? What truth is trying to be born? Because in the end, it's not comfort that transforms us. It's confrontation with reality. And reality, though it wounds, also heals, if we have the courage to listen. Imagine going through deep pain, betrayal, failure, illness, and instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "What now?" This subtle shift is the heart of Stoic wisdom. It does not deny suffering, it does not romanticize it, but it does insist, suffering must not be wasted. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher born into slavery, knew real pain. Yet he taught that our suffering is never about what happens to us, but about how we judge what happens to us. His famous line says it all. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This isn't a cold dismissal of human pain. It's an invitation to reclaim agency, even in the darkest moments. In a world obsessed with comfort, we've been trained to see suffering as meaningless. But suffering, when faced consciously, can become purification. It can burn away illusions, expose the ego, and reveal values that were only theoretical until tested. Have you ever looked back on a painful season and realized it shaped your strength more than any success ever could? Stoicism teaches us to prepare for pain before it arrives, not with fear, but with readiness. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic, wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Pain becomes a teacher when we stop resisting it and start dialoguing with it. The Stoics believed that virtue, courage, temperance, justice, wisdom is forged in trial. If you never suffer, you never develop the muscles to carry moral weight. And if you only seek relief, you miss the deeper purpose, to become someone who can suffer well. Try this. The next time you encounter pain, whether emotional, relational, or existential, pause and ask, what part of my character is being called forward here? Is it patience, forgiveness, humility? Choose not to let the suffering harden you into bitterness. Let it refine you into clarity. Because every pain contains a seed, a chance to deepen your freedom, your virtue, your soul. The question is not whether you will suffer. That's guaranteed. The question is, will you suffer in vain, or will you let it shape you into someone truer, freer, and stronger than before? Picture a gardener standing before a thriving tree. It's full of leaves spreading wide, but not producing fruit. What does the gardener do? He cuts. Not because the tree is dying, but because it has too much life going in the wrong direction. This is the image I want to leave with you. Sometimes what feels like loss, failure, or collapse is not a punishment, but a pruning. A necessary pain designed not to destroy you, but to refocus your energy, strip away illusions, and help you bear fruit where it actually matters. But pruning hurts. It feels like being diminished, like having parts of your identity, plans, or relationships forcibly removed. It's easy to confuse it with rejection or failure. Yet anyone who has truly matured knows. The most fruitful seasons often come after the most painful cuts. The philosopher Joseph Pieper spoke of leisure not as mere rest, but as an interior openness to reality. Pruning invites that openness. It's life's way of slowing us down, of forcing us to pay attention to what we've been too busy or too proud to see. Have you ever looked back at a painful moment and realized it was exactly what needed to happen for you to become who you are today? In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, "Every branch that bears fruit, the Father prunes so that it may bear more fruit." This isn't a call to spiritualize suffering, but to recognize a principle of reality. Growth requires reduction. Strength requires surrender. Try this. Revisit a part of your life that has been cut away, a dream that ended, a role you lost, a person who left. Ask, not with bitterness, but with curiosity. What fruit might this pruning be preparing me to bear? Let this reflection ground you. Because when we resist the pruning, we scatter our energy in 1,000 directions, chasing false fullness. But when we accept it, we become focused, deepened, fruitful. So I'll end with a question. What if the pain you're carrying now is not the end, but the beginning of your becoming? If this journey through suffering, growth, and maturity has resonated with you, leave a comment. What has life pruned in you, and what has it made room for? And if you haven't already, subscribe. There's more ahead, and together, we'll keep walking this path of inner growth, one honest step at a time.